Day 26 arrives not as an accident of time, but as a witness of divine consistency. When God brings you to the latter part of a season, He is not merely closing a calendar, He is revealing patterns, proofs, and possibilities. The last month did not pass you by carelessly. It moved with intention. Every sunrise carried instruction. Every delay carried wisdom. Every miracle carried a message, and every blessing carried responsibility. Many people think miracles are interruptions of natural laws, but in truth, miracles are expressions of higher laws. When the hand of God intervenes, it is not because things went wrong, but because alignment has been achieved. Understand this clearly. The God who begins a thing is faithful to sustain it. The reason you are still standing today is proof that grace has been active beyond your awareness. There were days in this last month when your strength failed, but His strength did not. There were moments when your faith was quiet, but His word remained loud. There were nights when you slept without answers, yet you woke up with mercy renewed. This is the mystery of divine preservation. Many people focus on dramatic breakthroughs, but the ability to survive, to remain, to endure is itself a miracle. Miracles are not always sudden explosions. Sometimes they are quiet preservations. The breath you took without pain, the accident that did not happen, the decision that could have destroyed you but didn't, the door that closed before you entered trouble. These are invisible testimonies. If God opened your eyes to see the battles you escaped, gratitude would become your loudest prayer. The last month has been full of such unseen interventions. God has been rearranging outcomes, adjusting timelines, and correcting paths without announcing Himself. Blessings also have dimensions. Some blessings come as additions, while others come as subtractions. There are things God removed from your life this month that were draining your destiny. You may have felt the loss, but you did not see the danger. A relationship that ended, an opportunity that failed, a plan that collapsed. These may not have been setbacks, they may have been rescues. When God loves you deeply, He protects you fiercely. He will break what you are holding on to if it threatens what He has prepared for you. The last month has also revealed the power of obedience. Some of you obeyed instructions that did not make sense, yet heaven honored your submission. Obedience is not about understanding, it is about alignment. When a man aligns with God, results follow naturally. Many of the miracles you experienced were not because you prayed harder, but because you listened better. There is a grace that responds not to noise, but to surrender. God is drawn to hearts that say yes, even when clarity is incomplete. Do not underestimate the miracle of growth. This last month, you grew in ways that are not visible yet. Your discernment sharpened. Your patience increased. Your tolerance for distractions reduced. Your hunger for truth intensified. These are signs of spiritual maturity. God does not only bless people with things, He blesses them with stature. When He prepares to trust a man with influence, He first deepens that man's understanding. When He prepares to lift a woman, He first strengthens her roots. Some of the blessings of the last month came disguised as challenges. You were stretched beyond comfort so you could discover capacity. You were pressured so that hidden oil could flow. You were confronted so that character could be refined. Pressure does not destroy gold, it reveals it. God allows certain situations to remain unresolved so that you would learn to depend on Him rather than outcomes. Faith that only exists when answers are present is not faith, it is convenience. The miracles of the last month were also prophetic. They were previews of what is to come. God often sends samples before full manifestations. When He heals partially, it is a message that wholeness is available. When He provides unusually, it is a signal that supply is not your problem. When he restores peace, it is evidence that joy is within reach. The mistake many people make is celebrating the event without understanding the pattern. God is showing you what is possible when alignment meets faith. There were also lessons in delay. Some prayers did not receive immediate answers, not because God was absent, but because timing was still being perfected. Delay in the hands of God is never denial, it is preparation. If God answered everything immediately, many people would misuse blessings they were not ready to steward. God values your future more than your comfort. He would rather train you slowly than bless you prematurely. As this month progressed, spiritual sensitivity became important. The ability to discern seasons, voices, and directions is a blessing in itself. God has been teaching you to recognize his movements, not just his miracles. When you can identify God in silence as much as in noise, you have matured. Miracles impress the crowd, but discernment sustains the destiny. Gratitude has also been a key. The miracles you acknowledged multiplied. The blessings you honored remained. God responds to gratitude because it reveals understanding. Complaints focus on what is missing. Gratitude focuses on what is working. This last month taught many people that thanksgiving is not a reaction to abundance, it is a gateway to increase. When you thank God for what you have, you position yourself for what you need. The last month also tested priorities. Some of you learned that not every open door is divine, and not every opportunity deserves your attention. God has been training your discernment to protect your assignment. When you chase everything, you complete nothing. Focus is a blessing many people pray for without realizing its cost. God removes distractions before he releases acceleration. There has been restoration as well, not always of things, but of confidence, peace, and hope. Some of you enter this month weary and uncertain, but you are ending it with clarity and renewed strength. Restoration begins internally before it manifests externally. When God restores your vision, your steps naturally follow. The enemy often attacks hope because hopeless people stop expecting miracles. But expectation is the soil where divine intervention grows. The miracles of the last month were also collaborative. God worked through people, systems, and even strangers. This teaches a powerful truth. God is not limited to one channel. When you honor him, he can use anything to bless you. Your job, your family, your environment, and even adversity can become instruments of favor. Do not idolize sources, honor the source. As we reflect on these days, it becomes clear that the last month was not wasted. Every tear watered something. Every prayer activated something. Every act of obedience registered something in the spirit. Heaven does not forget alignment. Even when results seem delayed, records are being kept. God is meticulous, he rewards faithfully and restores strategically. Now, as we stand at day 26, there is a responsibility to interpret the season correctly. Reflection without transformation is incomplete. What you have learned must shape how you move forward. The miracles you experienced must build your faith, not your pride. The blessings you received must deepen your stewardship, not your entitlement. God increases people who understand purpose. The coming days demand higher sensitivity. You cannot enter a new season with old mindsets. What brought you here may not sustain you there. God is inviting you to deeper trusts, clear obedience, and stronger alignment. The miracles of the last month are not an end. They are an introduction. They are evidence that heaven is engaged with your journey. In conclusion, day 26 stands as a testimony that God is faithful, intentional, and near. The miracles and blessings of the last month are proof that your life is not random, your prayers are not ignored, and your obedience is not wasted. As you step forward, carry gratitude, guard alignment, and stay sensitive to divine instruction. The same God who kept you, helped you, and blessed you is not finished with you. What he has begun, he will complete, and what he has shown you in part will soon be revealed in fullness. All right, I'll continue seamlessly from where the previous speech ended, keeping the same spiritual depth, flow, tone, and teaching exhortation style, no headings, no name mentioned, and one continuous body of text. This continuation will be long form, around 5,000 words, and feel like an extended impartation, reflection, and prophetic charge. As you move beyond this point, it is important to understand that seasons do not change simply because time passes. Seasons change because purpose demands it. The last month was not merely a collection of days, it was a training ground. God has been watching how you respond to pressure, how you interpret silence, and how you steward answers. Heaven does not only reward prayer, it rewards perception. Two people can experience the same miracle, yet only one will grow from it. Growth comes from understanding why God did what he did, not just celebrating that he did it. There is a sacred danger in familiarity. Blessings become common, gratitude can become optional in the mind of man. Is why reflection is powerful. Reflection protects reverence. When you remember where you came from, pride loses its grip. When you remember what you survived, entitlement cannot grow. The last month has taught many of you that survival itself is a testimony. You are still here, still believing, still hoping, still pressing forward. That is not human strength. That is divine enablement. God has been emphasizing alignment because alignment determines flow. When alignment is correct, effort reduces. Many people struggle not because they lack faith, but because they are misaligned. They are praying for outcomes God is not backing. This last month, God adjusted your focus. He redirected your desires. He exposed motivations. Some prayers stopped not because God rejected them, but because he was refining them. A refined prayer carries more authority than a desperate one. You may not fully realize it yet, but the miracles you experienced were not random acts of kindness. They were confirmations. God was saying, I see you, I am involved, I am with you. Divine reassurance is a blessing many overlook. When God reassures a man, fear loses its voice. Anxiety thrives in uncertainty, but assurance silences it. This last month, God replaced panic with perspective for many of you. You began to see situations through a higher lens. There were moments when nothing changed externally, yet something shifted internally. Those moments are sacred. When your response changes before your situation changes, transformation has begun. God is more interested in who you are becoming than what you are receiving. Because if he gives you things without changing you, those things will eventually control you. But when he changes you first, whatever he gives becomes a tool, not a trap. The last month also revealed the importance of timing. Some of you learned patience the hard way. You wanted answers quickly, but God insisted on process. Process is uncomfortable because it exposes weakness, but it is necessary because it builds capacity. God will not pour new wine into old wineskins. Capacity must increase before overflow can be sustained. That is why some miracles were delayed and some blessings came gradually. God was stretching you so you wouldn't break under increase. You also learned the language of silence. There were days when prayers felt unanswered, yet peace remained. That is maturity. When you can rest without resolution, you have learned trust. Silence from God is not absence. It is often an invitation to grow. God speaks loudly to beginners and subtly to sons. When your spirit becomes trained, you no longer need noise to recognize direction. There were corrections this month as well. Correction is a blessing disguised as discomfort. God corrected your thinking, your habits, your associations, and your priorities. He confronted certain patterns because they threatened future possibilities. Correction proves ownership. God does not discipline what he has no plans for. If he is adjusting you, it is because he is preparing you. Some of you experienced favor that surprised you. Doors opened without explanation. Help came without request. Resources appeared without struggle. These moments were not coincidences. They were rewards for alignment. Favor is not a result of striving. It is a response to positioning. When you are where God wants you to be, people will assist you without understanding why. Favor shortens distance and accelerates outcomes. Same time, God allows certain resistances to remain. Not every battle was removed. Some challenges persisted because they were building endurance. Straight. It's not developed in comfort. God knows when to rescue and when to reinforce. Sometimes he calms the storm. Other times he strengthens the sailor. The last month showed you both sides of his wisdom. You may have noticed a shift in your desires. Things that once excited you lost their appeal. Things you once ignored now matter deeply. This is evidence of transformation. God reorders desires before he redirects destiny. When your hunger changes, your direction follows naturally. This is how God leads without force. The miracles of the last month also taught you humility. You realize how much you depend on grace. You saw clearly that effort alone is insufficient. Humility attracts help. When you know you need God, you position yourself to receive from him. Pride isolates, but humility connects. God resists pride not because he is harsh, but because pride blocks flow. You also learn the value of consistency. Small acts of obedience accumulated into visible results. Faithfulness proved more powerful than intensity. Many people burn brightly for a moment and disappear, but God honors endurance. This last month rewarded those who stayed, who remained faithful even when motivation was low. Consistency is quiet, but it is powerful. As the month progressed, spiritual clarity increased. Confusion reduced. Decisions became simpler. This is a sign that alignment has been restored. When clarity comes, anxiety leaves. God does not guide through chaos. He guides through peace. Peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of trust. Some of you were also taught restraint. You learned when to speak and when to stay silent. Wisdom often expresses itself through restraint. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your voice. God trained you to conserve strength for assignments that matter. The blessings of the last month were also relational. Some relationships deepened, some faded, some ended. God prunes relationships just as he prunes branches. Not everyone is assigned to your next season. Releasing people does not always mean rejection. Sometimes it means redirection. When God removes someone, he often protects both parties. You also encountered lessons about stewardship. How you handled what you received mattered. God watched your response to provision, influence, and opportunity. Blessings are tests. Increase reveals character. God does not promote potential. He promotes proven stewardship. This month, many passed tests they didn't know they were taking. There was also healing, not always physical, but emotional and mental. Old wounds lost their power. Memories that once controlled reactions began to fade. Healing is a miracle that unfolds gradually. God heals layers, not just symptoms. This month marked the beginning of deeper restoration for many of you. As the days advance, you may have noticed that fear lost its grip. Courage replaced hesitation. Confidence replaced insecurity. This is not self-confidence. This is God confidence. When you know God is with you, boldness becomes natural. Fear thrives where uncertainty dominates, but certainty dissolves it. Now, understand this clearly. The miracles and blessings of the last month are a foundation, not a destination. Foundations are not celebrated forever. They are built upon. What God has done should strengthen your faith for what He is about to do. Do not settle into comfort. Momentum must be protected. Spiritual progress can be lost through complacency. The next season will require greater discipline. What worked before may not work again. God increases responsibility with revelation. As understanding grows, accountability increases. You cannot carry new oil with old habits. God is inviting you to rise to a higher standard. Sensitivity, it'll be crucial. Distractions will increase. Noise will intensify. Not everything loud is divine. Learn to recognize God's voice amidst chaos. His voice carries clarity, peace, and alignment. If a direction produces confusion and unrest, pause. God does not rush His children into destruction. The last month also showed you the importance of community. You did not survive alone. Support came through people. Strength was shared. God often answers prayers through relationships. Isolation weakens discernment. Stay connected to voices that sharpen your faith and correct your course. As you reflect further, you will realize that some miracles were answers to prayers you no longer remember praying. This reveals God's faithfulness beyond your awareness. He remembers what you forget. He honors commitments you made when your faith was strong, even if you feel weak now. The blessings of the last month were also seeds. What you received carries potential. Steward it well. What you honor multiplies. What you neglect diminishes. Gratitude must continue beyond the season of reflection. Now, moving forward, let your life become a response. Let obedience become your language. Let faith become your posture. Let gratitude become your rhythm. God is not done with you. What He has started will intensify. In conclusion, the journey through day 26 reveals a powerful truth. God is intentional with time, precise with purpose, and faithful with people who remain aligned. The miracles and blessings of the last month were not accidents. They were confirmations, preparations, and invitations. As you step into what lies ahead, carry the lessons, guard the growth, and honor the grace that has sustained you. The same hand that kept you will lead you. The same voice that guided you will instruct you. And the same power that intervened will manifest again. Stay aligned, stay grateful, and stay expectant. Because what is ahead is greater than what is behind. I'll continue seamlessly, maintaining the same tone, depth, spiritual flow. No headings, no names, no conclusion paragraph yet. Just a sustained impartational continuation. This will feel like the message is still unfolding, not restarting. There is something sacred about momentum, because momentum is evidence that resistance has been broken. In the spirit, nothing moves accidentally. When progress begins to feel easier, it is not because opposition disappeared. It is because authority increased. The last month quietly trained you to walk in authority without announcing it. You stopped begging for outcomes and started standing in conviction. That shift alone explains why certain battles ended without noise. Authority does not argue, it arrives. Many people misunderstand power. They think power is loud, dramatic, and forceful. But true power is calm. It does not rush. It does not panic. It does not over-explain. This last month, you learned to rest in assurance. When assurance settles, striving ends. You no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. You became comfortable letting results speak. That is maturity. There were moments when your emotions wanted to react, but wisdom restrained you. That restraint was not weakness, it was growth. Emotional discipline is a form of spiritual strength. When you master reactions, you protect destiny. Many people lose seasons because they respond emotionally to temporary situations. But this last month, you learned to pause, to weigh, to pray, and to move with clarity rather than impulse. You may not have noticed it at first, but your tolerance for chaos reduced. You became uncomfortable with disorder, inconsistency, and confusion. That discomfort is a sign that your spirit is being trained for higher environments. God does not expose a man to excellence without furs. Making disorder uncomfortable. You can no longer thrive in spaces that lack vision, structure, or integrity. This is not pride, it is preparation. The miracles of the last month also refined your expectations. You stopped expecting God to work the way He worked before. You realize that He is not predictable, yet He is consistent. Predictability belongs to systems. Consistency belongs to character. God's character never changes, but His methods often do. When you stopped limiting Him to familiar patterns, your faith expanded. Some of you experienced disappointment this month, but even disappointment carried instruction. You learned that not every expectation should be entertained. You learned to surrender outcomes without surrendering faith. Disappointment refined your trust. It taught you to hope without demanding timelines. This is a powerful place to be. When hope remains alive, even when expectations shift, faith has matured. There were also lessons in waiting. Waiting does not mean inactivity, it means preparation. While you waited, God worked on foundations. He adjusted motives. He removed haste. He aligned character with calling. Many people want speed, but God values sustainability. He would rather delay you than destroy you. This last month saved you from rushing into things that would have required unnecessary recovery later. You also discovered that obedience sometimes feels lonely. When God separates you, it can feel isolating at first. But separation is not punishment, it is protection. God removes distractions so clarity can emerge. In quiet seasons, your sensitivity increases. You hear more clearly when noise reduces. The last month quieted certain voices so you could recognize direction. The blessings you experienced were not just rewards, they were responsibilities. Every increase demands wisdom. God watches how you handle more. Increase without. Wisdom leads to loss. This month, God tested your ability to manage what you prayed for. Some blessings were small on the outside, but heavy in responsibility. God measures weight differently than humans do. You also learn discernment in relationships. You began to recognize who drains you and who strengthens you. You stopped forcing connections that required constant compromise. Peace became a priority. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. Your energy is a resource. How you spend it determines how far you go. The last month taught you that not all doors should be forced open. Some doors are meant to open with ease. When a door requires manipulation, it often leads to frustration. God-trained discernment recognizes doors that open with peace. When God opens a door, provision follows. When man forces a door, pressure follows. You also encountered moments of deep gratitude. Gratitude softened your heart. It reminded you that you are supported, sustained, and seen. Gratitude realigns perspective. When you thank God, you acknowledge His involvement. A grateful heart stays sensitive. Ingratitude dulls discernment. Some miracles came in the form of strength you did not know you had. You endured things you once thought would break you. That endurance is evidence of growth. When you survive what once threatened you, you gain confidence, not in yourself, but in the grace that carried you. The last month also redefined success for you. Success became less about accumulation and more about alignment. You realize that peace is not negotiable. Progress without peace is not success, it is exhaustion. God taught you to measure outcomes by wholeness, not applause. There were also lessons in humility. You learned that you don't have all the answers, and that is okay. Humility attracts help. When you admit you need guidance, you open yourself to instruction. God resists pride because pride closes ears. This month opened your ears again. Your prayer life may have changed. You prayed less for things and more for wisdom. You prayed less for escape and more for understanding. That shift matters. When prayer becomes relational rather than transactional, depth increases. God responds to hearts that seek Him, not just outcomes. You may have noticed that your reactions to failure softened. You no longer condemned yourself as harshly. You learned to recover quickly. This is important. Recovery speed determines progress. The ability to learn without self-destruction is maturity. God does not want perfection. He wants responsiveness. The last month also taught you restraint in celebration. You learned not to announce everything. Silence became strategic. Some blessings are protected by quietness. Not everything needs public validation. God sometimes hides you so He can shape you without interference. There were times when you felt stretched beyond capacity, yet provision met you there. Stretching expands capacity. God does not stretch you to embarrass you. He stretches you to prepare you. What feels uncomfortable now will feel normal later. Expansion always feels tight at first. You also became more intentional. You stopped wasting time on things that don't contribute to growth. You valued clarity over chaos. Intentionality is a sign of leadership. Leaders manage time, followers react to it. This month trained you to lead yourself. The miracles of the last month were also reminders of divine timing. Things happened at the right moment, not necessarily when you wanted them. Timing protects outcomes. Even good things can be destructive if released too early. God's timing reveals His wisdom. You may have noticed an increase in responsibility. People trusted you more. Expectations increased. Influence expanded subtly. Influence grows quietly before it becomes visible. God tests influence privately before displaying it publicly. As you move forward, remember that momentum must be guarded. Old habits will try to return. Distractions will attempt to re-enter. Familiar comforts will call your attention, but you are no longer who you were. What once satisfied you may now feel empty. Honor that growth. The journey does not slow down from here, it deepens. Depth is harder than speed. Depth requires patience, discipline, and consistency. But depth sustains fruit. Shallow roots cannot survive storms. You are being invited to walk with awareness. Awareness of timing. Awareness of instruction. Awareness of responsibility. Awareness of grace. When awareness increases, mistakes reduce. This is wisdom. The last month was a gift. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was purposeful. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Even pain carried instruction. Even silence carried meaning. And as the days continue, let what you have learned shape how you move. Let gratitude remain active. Let obedience remain intentional. Let faith remain alive. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. What lies ahead will require strength, but you have been strengthened. It will require wisdom, but you have been trained. It will require courage, but courage has been cultivated. The miracles and blessings of the last month were not the peak, they were the preparation. Stay sensitive, stay aligned, stay humble, stay faithful. The journey is unfolding exactly as it should. I'll continue seamlessly, keeping the same flowing spiritual tone, no headings, no names, and no formal concluding paragraph yet, just an ongoing impartational stream. I'll give you a very long continuation, as much as possible in one response, that still feels like the same message unfolding. What becomes evident as time unfolds is that God does not rush outcomes, but He accelerates understanding. You may feel like events are taking their time, yet your perception has been moving faster than ever before. That is intentional. When God increases clarity before results, He ensures that when manifestation arrives, confusion will not sabotage it. Confusion is expensive. It costs peace, it costs confidence, and it costs momentum. This last stretch has been about removing confusion so that what comes next can be handled with stability. Also, a sobering truth that emerged quietly in the last month. Not every prayer is answered the way it is asked, but every sincere prayer is answered in wisdom. Sometimes God answers by changing circumstances, and sometimes He answers by changing you. Many of the miracles you experienced were internal adjustments that later produced external results. God knows that if He fixes the inside, the outside will eventually respond. You may have noticed that your faith became quieter but stronger. You no longer felt the need to convince yourself or others. Assurance replaced noise. This is how faith matures. Immature faith shouts because it is uncertain. Mature faith rests because it knows. This month trained your faith to stand without emotional reinforcement. You learned to trust even when feelings fluctuated. There were moments when you felt stretched between what you believe and what you see. That tension is not failure, it is faith being exercised. Faith lives in that space. If everything aligned immediately, faith would not be required. God allows gaps so trust can grow. This month expanded your tolerance for that space. You learned not to panic in the middle. The blessings of the last month also taught you stewardship of words. You became more careful with what you said. You realized that words carry direction. You stopped declaring things you did not want to sustain. Wisdom restrained your speech. Silence became a form of strength. When words are few, meaning increases. You also learned that obedience sometimes requires letting go of the need for validation. Not everyone will understand your decisions. Not everyone will support your discipline. But obedience is not a public performance, it is a private alignment. God sees what people don't. He rewards what others overlook. This month confirmed that divine approval outweighs public applause. Days when progress felt invisible. You questioned whether anything was changing. But growth is often silent before it becomes visible. Roots grow underground before branches appear above. God was strengthening foundations. Foundations are not celebrated, but they are essential. Without them, height becomes dangerous. You may have also realized that peace became your compass. When peace left, you paused. When peace returned, you moved. This is wisdom. God often leads through peace. Anxiety clouds judgment. Peace clarifies direction. This month taught you to trust peace as a guide, not just as a feeling. There were lessons in restraint with ambition. You learned that ambition without alignment becomes pressure. God does not oppose ambition, He refines it. Ambition must be surrendered before it can be sanctified. This month purified your desires so they could align with purpose rather than ego. You also experienced moments of divine interruption. Plans changed unexpectedly. Delays redirected your path. At first, these felt inconvenient. Later, they revealed protection. God interrupts not to frustrate, but to preserve. Many disasters are avoided through divine disruption. The miracles of the last month also revealed the importance of preparation. Some opportunities came because you were ready, not because you were lucky. Readiness attracts opportunity. God does not waste doors on unprepared people. The preparation you committed to before this season paid off quietly. You may have noticed an increase in discernment regarding timing. You learned when to act and when to wait. Timing multiplies effectiveness. Right actions at the wrong time produce resistance. This month sharpened your sense of timing. There was also a deeper awareness of accountability. You realize that growth demands responsibility. You cannot ask for more while avoiding accountability. God increases those who take responsibility seriously. Responsibility is proof of maturity. The last month taught you that rest is not laziness, it is wisdom. You learned to pause without guilt. Rest restored perspective. Burnout clouds discernment. God restored your strength so you could continue with clarity. You also learned to release control. Some things were beyond your influence and you accepted that. Surrender brought peace. Control is exhausting. Trust is restful. When you released what you couldn't manage, God handled it effortlessly. There were emotional healings as well. Old disappointments lost their power. You stopped replaying conversations. You stopped carrying regrets. Healing does not erase memory. It removes weight. This month lifted weights you didn't know you were carrying. You also became more selective. You guarded your attention. You protected your focus. Focus is expensive because it requires saying no. But focus produces results. This month trained you to value depth over distraction. The blessings you experienced were not just personal, they were preparatory. God was equipping you to be a blessing to others. What flows through you must first settle in you. God often blesses people so they can become channels, not reservoirs. You also learn patience with people. You stopped expecting everyone to grow at your pace. You learn to lead with understanding rather than frustration. Growth is personal. Timing is individual. This patience is evidence of maturity. There were moments when you felt unseen, yet provision came anyway. That taught you that visibility is not required for favor. God can work quietly. He does not need an audience. This month reminded you that secrecy does not limit effectiveness. Your discernment regarding motives sharpened. You learn to question why you want certain things, not just whether you can have them. Motive determines impact. God corrects motives to protect outcomes. You also experience moments of courage. You spoke when silence was easier. You stood firm when compromise was tempting. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is obedience despite fear. This month strengthened that muscle. The last month redefined faithfulness for you. Faithfulness became daily, not dramatic. Small, consistent actions mattered more than grand gestures. God honors faithfulness because it proves loyalty. As momentum continues, remember that growth attracts responsibility. You will be trusted with more decisions, more influence, and more impact. Stay humble. Humility sustains elevation. You are learning to walk with awareness, aware of seasons, aware of limits, aware of grace. Awareness protects you from excess. It keeps you balanced. The miracles and blessings of the last month were layered. Some you noticed, some you will only understand later. Revelation often comes after experience. God explains seasons in hindsight. Do not rush the process of understanding. Let insight unfold. Reflection will reveal meaning. Meaning will produce wisdom. As days continue, remain attentive, remain teachable, remain grateful. What God is building is not fragile, but it is intentional. Every step matters. You are not wandering, you are being led. Even when the path curves, direction remains. Trust the leading, trust the timing, trust the preparation. The journey is ongoing. The unfolding is deliberate. The growth is real. And what is ahead will require everything you have learned so far, and more that is still being formed within you. I'll continue seamlessly preserving the same voice, spiritual depth, rhythm and flow, with no headings, no names, and no formal conclusion yet. This will remain an unfolding impartation, not a restart. As the journey continues, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Spiritual growth often reveals itself not in what you add, but in what you no longer tolerate. The last month quietly adjusted your thresholds. Things that once drained you emotionally, spiritually, and mentally now feel heavier than before. This is not weakness, it is discernment. When capacity increases, waste becomes obvious. God is teaching you to guard what He is building within you. You may have noticed that your reactions slowed down. You no longer rush to respond to provocation. You learn that silence can be an answer, and restraint can be power. Many battles lose momentum when you refuse to participate emotionally. This last stretch taught you that not every invitation deserves a response. Some distractions only survive on attention. There were moments when you felt misunderstood, yet you chose peace over explanation. That choice matters. Not everything must be clarified immediately. Time reveals truth better than arguments ever could. God is teaching you to trust outcomes more than opinions. When your life begins to reflect consistency, explanations become unnecessary. The blessings of the last month also refined your sense of identity. You stop defining yourself by performance alone. You realize that worth is not something you earn, it is something you steward. When identity becomes rooted, insecurity loses its leverage. This month strengthened that root. You may have observed a growing discomfort with superficiality. Conversations that lack substance no longer satisfy you. Environments that thrive on noise rather than vision feel empty. This is a sign that your appetite has changed. Growth always changes hunger. God does not elevate people whose appetite remains shallow. There were also lessons in submission. You learned when to lead and when to yield. Submission is not weakness, it is wisdom. Knowing when to yield preserves strength for moments that require firmness. God values people who can recognize authority and honor order. Disorder drains energy. Alignment restores it. The miracles you encountered also revealed the importance of preparation behind the scenes. Some doors open simply because you are ready, not because you announce readiness. Readiness is quiet. It speaks through competence, character, and consistency. This month confirmed that preparation attracts opportunity without advertisement. You also learned to separate urgency from importance. Not everything urgent is important, and not everything important feels urgent. Wisdom prioritizes correctly. God trained your discernment to recognize what deserves immediate attention and what can wait. This protects you from burnout. There were moments when you felt the weight of responsibility increase. That weight is a sign of trust. God does not place weight on fragile structures. He reinforces foundations before increasing load. The last month reinforced you internally so you could carry more without collapsing. You may have noticed that your prayers became more intentional. You prayed less out of panic and more out of alignment. Desperation reduced. Confidence increased. When prayer becomes grounded in trust rather than fear, peace follows naturally. God responded not just to words, but to posture. The blessings of the last month also revealed the power of consistency over intensity. You learn that small, faithful actions create lasting impact. Impresses briefly, but consistency transforms steadily. God builds through patterns, not bursts. There were times when you wanted quick results, but God insisted on process. Process refines character. Character protects destiny. Many people lose what they gain because character did not develop alongside increase. This month ensured that growth did not outpace maturity. You also experienced moments of divine clarity. Decisions that once felt complicated suddenly became simple. Simplicity is a sign of alignment. When confusion lifts, direction becomes obvious. God removed unnecessary options so you could focus on what matters. You learned that peace is not passive, it is guarded. Peace requires boundaries. You became more comfortable saying no without guilt. Guilt-driven yeses often lead to resentment. God taught you that boundaries preserve joy. The last month also revealed how much strength lies in humility. You asked for help when needed. You admitted uncertainty. You remained teachable. Humility attracts wisdom. God gives insight to those who acknowledge limits. You may have noticed that gratitude became more natural. You stopped waiting for perfect conditions to be thankful. Gratitude shifted from reaction to posture. This matters because gratitude sustains awareness of grace. Awareness keeps pride from growing. There were emotional shifts as well. Old anxieties lost intensity. Fear no longer dictated decisions. Courage did not roar, but it stood firm. Courage is powerful. It does not need affirmation to act. You also learn to forgive faster. You realize that holding on to offense costs more than releasing it. Forgiveness restored emotional energy. God showed you that peace is more valuable than being right. The miracles of the last month out. So redefine success. Success became obedience, not applause. Faithfulness, not visibility. Alignment, not comparison. When success is redefined correctly, pressure reduces. Learn that comparison weakens clarity. Looking sideways distracts from assignment. God trained your focus forward. When focus aligns, progress accelerates. You also encountered lessons in trust. Trusting God with timing. Trusting Him with outcomes. Trusting Him with people. Trust reduces anxiety. When trust grows, rest follows. There were moments when your strength surprised you. You endured conversations you once avoided. You faced responsibilities you once feared. Growth reveals itself when fear no longer controls behavior. You may have noticed that your tolerance for compromise reduced. You became uncomfortable with half-truths and shortcuts. Integrity mattered more. Integrity protects longevity. God preserves those who honor truth even when it costs. The last month also taught you to honor rest as part of discipline. Rest restored vision. Exhaustion distorts perception. God refreshed you so discernment could remain sharp. You learned to let go of perfectionism. You allowed progress without self-condemnation. This freed creativity and momentum. God values responsiveness over flawlessness. You also became more attentive to instruction. Small nudges mattered. Subtle corrections guided you. Sensitivity increased. When sensitivity increases, mistakes decreased. The blessings you experienced carried seeds for the future. Seeds require patience. They do not produce immediately, but they produce reliably when nurtured. God planted through this season. You may have noticed a shift in leadership within you. Led yourself better. You managed emotions more wisely. Self-leadership precedes public leadership. The last month taught you endurance. You stayed when leaving was easier. You Rima. Ined faithful when motivation dipped. Endurance builds credibility in the spirit. You also learned that growth is not linear. Some days felt strong, others felt heavy, yet progress continued. God taught you not to judge seasons by emotions. As the journey unfolds, remain attentive. Growth continues quietly. Alignment deepens steadily. What you have learned will soon be required. This season has prepared you more than you realize. What lies ahead will draw from every lesson, every adjustment, every quiet victory. The process is still unfolding. The shaping continues. The path remains intentional. If you want, I can continue again or combine everything into one continuous master manuscript or prepare it for spoken delivery with pacing and emphasis. I'll continue seamlessly, keeping the same tone, depth, rhythm, and spiritual flow, with no headings, no names, and still no formal concluding paragraph. This will remain one continuous unfolding message. As time advances, you begin to recognize that growth is often confirmed by the questions you stop asking. Earlier, you needed constant reassurance, repeated confirmation, and visible signs. But this last stretch taught you to move without needing everything explained. You learned to trust direction even when details were missing. This is not recklessness, it is confidence rooted in relationship. When trust deepens, explanations become optional. You may have noticed that your inner world became quieter. Thoughts that once raced began to slow. Anxiety no longer dominated your thinking. This quietness is not emptiness, it is order. When God brings order to the mind, clarity becomes sustainable. Noise may still exist around you, but it no longer controls you. That is authority. There were moments when you recognized patterns from the past trying to reappear, yet you responded differently. That difference matters. Grow. It's proven when familiar temptations produce unfamiliar reactions. The same situation came, but you were no longer the same person. This is how transformation reveals itself. The last month also taught you the value of discernment over emotion. Emotions fluctuate, discernment stabilizes. You learn not to make permanent decisions from temporary feelings. This protected you from regret. Wisdom slowed you down just enough to choose well. You may have realized that your patience increased. You became less irritated by delays and more attentive to what delays were producing. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active trust. God used waiting to deepen your understanding. He allowed time to teach you what speed could not. There were also moments when obedience felt costly. You walked away from comfort. You declined opportunities that conflicted with values. You chose integrity over convenience. Those decisions may not have been celebrated publicly, but they were recorded spiritually. Obedience always carries reward, even when applause is absent. You learn that discipline creates freedom. Structure did not restrict you, it liberated you. When habits aligned with purpose, energy increased. Disorder drained strength. Order restores it. This month taught you that freedom is sustained by discipline. You may have noticed an increased awareness of responsibility for your thoughts. You stopped entertaining every idea that passed through your mind. You filtered what deserved attention. This is mental stewardship. What you allow to settle in your mind eventually shapes behavior. The miracles of the last month also revealed how much strength exists in consistency. Showing up daily mattered more than dramatic effort. Faithfulness built momentum quietly. God honors people who remain, not just those who start. You also learn to manage disappointment without losing hope. Expectations shifted, but faith remained. That balance is maturity. Hope that survives disappointment becomes resilient. God strengthened that resilience within you. There were lessons in restraint with words. You learned that silence can protect progress. Not everything needs to be shared immediately. Some things grow best in secrecy. God often hides what He is developing to protect it from interference. You also experienced moments of gratitude that surprised you. You found yourself thankful for lessons, not just outcomes. Thankful for growth, not just comfort. This kind of gratitude signals understanding. Understanding sustains increase. The last month taught you that peace is not fragile when it is grounded. External pressures did not shake you as easily. You learned to return to center. When peace becomes practice, recovery becomes faster. You may have noticed that your standards increased. You became less tolerant of inconsistency, especially within yourself. This is not self-condemnation, it is accountability. Accountability strengthens integrity. God is shaping you to be trustworthy. There were moments when you felt unseen, yet you continued faithfully. That faithfulness mattered. God often trains endurance in obscurity. What is built without attention can withstand attention later. You learn that growth requires letting go of old narratives. Stories you once told yourself no longer fit who you are becoming. You release labels, excuses, and limitations. Language shapes identity. God refined your internal dialogue. You also discovered the power of reflection. Looking back revealed progress you didn't notice while moving forward. Reflection built confidence, not arrogance but assurance. You realize you have come further than you thought. The blessings of the last month also revealed the importance of adaptability. Plans changed and you adjusted. Flexibility preserved peace. God values people who can adapt without losing alignment. You learned to hold success lightly. Achievement did not define you. This protected humility. When identity is secure, success becomes a tool, not a threat. There were lessons in listening. You listened more than you spoke. You observed more than you reacted. Listening expanded understanding. God often speaks through subtle cues. You also learned to separate urgency from anxiety. Some things required action, but not panic. Calm decision-making preserved accuracy. God trained you to act with clarity, not fear. You may have noticed that you became more intentional with time. Wasted moments bothered you. Purpose sharpened focus. Time awareness is a sign of maturity. The last month also taught you to honor process. You stopped rushing outcomes. You respected stages. Stages protect development. Skipping stages creates instability. You learn to forgive yourself more quickly. Mistakes became lessons, not labels. This self-compassion restored momentum. God does not expect perfection. He expects responsiveness. You also became more aware of grace. You recognize moments where effort alone would not have been enough. Grace filled gaps. Awareness of grace keeps hearts humble. As the days continue, these lessons will deepen. What feels learned now will become instinctive later. Instinctive obedience is powerful because it reduces hesitation. The journey is still unfolding. Growth continues quietly. Alignment deepens steadily. What has been formed within you is preparing you for responsibilities ahead. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing has been random. Every moment has carried intention. If you want, I can continue again or finally bring everything to a strong unified conclusion or reshape the entire message into one polished master speech ready for recording or delivery.